All right, we are up and running. All right, everyone. This is Chris Bennett. He is running for House Seat 35, which is our Greenville Spartanburg area, running against Bill Chumley, who is the incumbent, as well as Garey Collins and Helen Pendarvis. So, Chris, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the platform that you're running on?
Yes, ma'am. So first off, thank you all for having me. And it was like I was telling her earlier, you get to see me in a nice fresh haircut since I get back to the barber today. So just want to say thank you for hosting this. And obviously what you do is very dear to my heart, because one of my main differences with the other people that I'm running against is the public education that I back, unlike the incumbent and one of the other challengers. So my name is Chris Bennett. I'm a husband to a public school teacher. She is a middle school teacher in Woodruff, South Carolina. So Woodruff Middle School, Spartanburg School District 4. Have two children. My daughter just turned 15, so she started driving about 3 weeks ago. And then my son will be 14. And they're all into athletics and all. We're highly active in our church community. My wife and I head up the disaster relief program at our church. So we're just very involved. We're involved in the Woodruff area soup kitchen, as well as Helping Hands. We do a lot with the foster and adoption services here in our area. We're on a foster adoption care team at our church. I volunteer at the Church of God Home for Children in Malden, South Carolina, in particular the high school house. So one of the main things that I'm running on is a voice for the people who have no voice and are in situations they didn't ask to be in. The same children that y'all see 180 times a year, that don't have the benefits of a loving mother and father, or a loving grandmother or grandfather at home to help guide them and encourage them to set goals, reach high, and attain goals, and to break cycles that their families have been in. And I think that is key for what teachers do in public education, is they help those children understand that just because the situation they're in currently, they don't have to live in that situation. And so I commend y'all for that. So just to let everybody know, I am an elected official. I'm on the Spartanburg County School District 4 Board of Trustees. I have been on the board for going on 4 years now. So obviously public education is very, very dear to my heart. I am absolutely a conservative Christian Republican. Sometimes that can be misconstrued as only those people want private education, and they only want homeschooling, and they want credits, and they want vouchers and such. But my philosophy in that is, yeah, well, that may help 10% more of the people go to private school or do what they need to do to get another step ahead in life. But the over 90% of the population, the school population, is public education, right? So what are we going to do if we start pulling funds out of that, and we start pulling those kids, like my kids? I could absolutely pull my kid out into the private school with or without a tax credit or anything. But what are we going to do with the rest of those children that don't choose to live where they live, don't choose to live the lifestyle they choose to live, and they have to live in it, and they can't get out of it? They're not going to be able to get in a car and drive 35 miles to a private school. So one of the main things that I say all the time is I don't have the answer for everything. You will not hear me spout out 8 or 10 different things that I'm going to change when I get to Columbia. Because here's the issue. For instance, I had a telephone call the other day, a Zoom meeting kind of like this one with a gentleman. And he wanted to know what I was going to do about the DSS situation and Medicaid for children and adults that are on the spectrum for mental health. And what are we going to do to help them? Well, guess what? I don't have a child that's mental health issues. I don't face that. I can't even act like, I can't even say, yeah, I know what you're going through, because because I don't. And so that's how I approach all my issues that I don't have hard facts about is, you know what? Let's go find the facts. It's fortunate for y'all. I do have pretty good amount of facts because I don't want to say a professional in education because I'm not. Y'all are the professionals in education. However, I do know a little bit more about this, so I'm extremely comfortable talking about it and analyzing situations, trying to make things better. So kind of to recap, I'm not a guy that's going to stand up here and spout out that I know how to fix things, but I have what I feel like takes to make a difference, which is the ability to collaborate, communicate, bring the right people to the table to get answers to further along whatever cause we're trying to further along. So did that answer all your questions?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And as a Christian myself, I'm of the very same opinion about private schools as well. And while I know private schools certainly have their place, and for some people that is a wonderful option, and I think that you have every right to choose your education for your child, I also feel that it's my mission field to be in the public education system, and that's a chance for me to love and build positive relationships with children who might not come across people like that in an everyday situation. And so who's going to see them if we don't get out into those communities?
And that's where, the light shines brightest in the darkness, correct? So, and that's what we tell our children, and we've had situations, look, our public school life, even though my wife teaches in the district's not been perfect. My child had a absolute horrible teacher. Everybody else was pulling their kid out. I told my son, said, CJ, we're not pulling you out, bud, because the rest of these children that don't have advocates that are at home that are fighting for their children, I need you there. So, he had to learn that at a young age in the 4th grade, but you know what? He'll be better for it. So
that's right. It builds character. Absolutely.
It does.
Well, one of our first questions is, what do you think, or what is your opinion on the state of public education in South Carolina today? Now, it doesn't have to be today with the pandemic, but just in general, like, what is your opinion on education in South Carolina?
So, a lot of people will not realize a public education that certain people get in certain areas of this state is exemplary. Other public education that they get in other parts of the state, albeit the I-95 corridor that we hear them speak about all the time, maybe don't get an exemplary education, right? So I think it's easy for some of us up here to say, no, public education is the only way to go. We need to do that. But I do think that there needs to be some more help to certain areas. I say this all the time. I don't believe your zip code should dictate the level of education or the type of education you're getting, nor should it determine what type of fire service or hospital care you get, nor should it determine your police officer coverage. That is a funding issue in all of those areas, okay? Obviously, the state had $2 billion, that's with a B, dollars in surplus last year. So it's not about we need to raise taxes to get more money. The issue is the appropriations and how they appropriate that. So one thing about the public education today is I think the funding model needs to be absolutely revamped. I listened to hours worth of conversation at the State House when they were having hearings on the funding model. And I think it was a Senate subcommittee that's listening to it right now. All these independent specialists that would come in. I mean, one of the guys is like, you realize that y'all have like hundreds of revenue streams that all flow that nobody really knows what all of them do. But every one of them has little caveats to it that you must take care of as an educator or as the principal or as the superintendent to be able to get that money. So it's not like they give X amount of $1 million to school district X and says, hey, do your best with it. Because I'm telling you this, I'm in the southern part of Spartanburg County. A lot of people will think, oh, Spartanburg County, y'all got it made. You got all the money in the world. Well, you realize Woodruff School District, Spartanburg County School District 4, is the 12th poorest district in the state of South Carolina. We have no tax base under the current situation, how we raise taxes or how we have taxes levied, which is all brought on by Act 388, which is, I believe, the right way to do things because I don't think our homeowners should be paying an exorbitant amount. But I think the issue is when you have communities that don't have a tax base like a District 6 in Spartanburg County. So your Dormans and your Spartan Highs and your Burns, you know, we have a major issue. But I think they're just very different issues in Woodruff than it is in McClellanville and Clarendon County, and you can go through the list. Everybody's different. So to have a funding model that everybody's got to check the same boxes and get the money off of, I think is a recipe for disaster. And so the funded issue, now I don't think it needs quite more money, but I do believe it needs to have a little bit more freedom at the school level for the way they're able to allow you, the teacher, to utilize that so that money gets all the way to the classroom. So that is one of the main things that I see in public education today. But also, I'll tell you that one of the things that's at the forefront during the pandemic, and I know you're not talking about in the pandemic precisely, but in the pandemic, can we not see what public education does? It feeds our children. It protects our children. I'm telling you right now, DSS is scared to death about what's going on in these children's homes right now because you, the educators, are the ones that see this, that go on every day, and you're the ones that can see little Johnny's not acting right. So what's up? You start digging, you send them to a guidance counselor. Next thing you know, they're the one calling DSS. Well, I can tell you DSS is scared to death about what's going on with children right now because we don't have educators blowing the whistle for them. So we can see both sides of what education lacks, and we can see what public education also does for our community. Nobody wants the school to shut down because the economy will tank. Well, let me tell you, public education's doing more than just educating.
Absolutely. I know as a teacher and a volunteer, I did 200 meals via the school bus yesterday for the students in Lawrence County, which is where I teach currently, and I was one of 3 or 4 buses. So to take 200 meals to 200 children for 2 days for them to get by, only for us to run another bus later this week for them for the rest of the week. It astonished me to see how many children in our county and in our school district alone that required our nutrition services just to get by for the week. And that's very sad.
Yeah, and then even from the volunteer standpoint, your backpack buddies, that's big up here in our community. You know, those children aren't getting backpacks full of food on Friday to go home over the weekend, which I know some schools are trying to pack more. My mom's a cafeteria manager, which is not a very glorious and glamorous job, but holds a very, very vital part because you, as an educator, can't teach a kid if that kid's stomach's growling and they're hungry. So, anyway.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what do you think are the steps that you would take to improve public education?
So the steps to improve, education, I think one thing, establishing the value of what public education does. And I think you, as a public educator currently, and the public education systems and everything they're going on right now under, I don't want to say a microscope, but in the forefront of what you're doing every day to keep life going for them. I think that's kind of solved issue number one, which basically shows that, hey, we are extremely needed. And I'm not talking about just teaching kids how to count or add or figure out the area and this, that, and the other. I mean, just life in general and protection and safety. But I would also like to see what I said earlier. I'd like to see our children be educated no matter what their zip code is at the same level. And currently that's not happening. So that's something that I'd like to see. Obviously, I've told you the funding. I think, as my wife tells me, so my wife took it upon herself this year. She is not a special ed teacher, okay? She is just a lowly old math teacher in the 7th grade, okay? She decided that she wanted the lowest of the low scoring children so she could work with them. And so one thing that she probably didn't take into account was and she knows this wholeheartedly now, that each one of those children have IEPs, and I don't even know all the different lingo. Okay, all these extra special needs. So Miguel, for instance, Miguel's like having 2 Okay, so I think a pupil weight for their services is more of a direction in which we need to go as it pertains to funding. Let's face it, my child, and I'm not bragging on my children, but my children don't need any special services. They don't have to have anything extra. It does not cost as much to educate my child as it does to cost to educate a child that has several other needs. But the answer is not just educate my child and take them on higher. The goal is to take every child higher. So I think our funding model is something that I would really like to get involved in to try to get situated. And, get it down to, because you hear educators all the time, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough money. Well, I think if we streamline the funding process, we get the money to the school so it's not choked out in other areas. And when those schools don't perform or don't get done what they need to get done, then I think that's the time that we can look at them and say, well, hang on, you've been saying you needed money all this time. We've streamlined all that, and your outcomes. But then again, you go back to outcomes. I would never want it outcomes based, because something else people don't understand that's not in education. You don't get to pick the 22 kids or the 27 kids that's in your class and all their baggage and the fact that their mom and dad were up screaming at each other all night long. And then they're supposed to sit in your class and you're supposed to teach them how to diagram a sentence when they've not slept at all last night. They didn't have breakfast because their parents won't fill in the form to get free and reduced breakfast and lunch. And so that outcome is not directly indicative on you, the educator, being teacher. So I think there probably needs to be more supportive services inside the school for some of these children. I think early identification is key. We've had a universal 4K at Woodruff for, don't quote me on this, 6 years, I would roughly say, where we've not turned any 4K child around. And I do believe that wholeheartedly that has helped in our children having those. And I would love, but that is something, and I think they're moving towards that, but I think that is key. So that's a few things that I would like to see.
Absolutely. Other than the issues that you brought up, funding and some of the other issues that you just brought up there, do you find that there's anything else that is a top issue for South Carolina public education other than special needs and funding?
Well, you hear it all the time. Right. So you hear all the time, retention, and having people interested in the teaching profession in that world. While I don't think money's the answer to everything, okay, money's not the answer to everything. I do think, I challenged our district superintendent. I said, who goes to the career fairs? And of course, it's 2 people from the district office. I was like, well, why don't you take it upon yourself to take a couple of teachers that can look at these young teachers that are coming out, or these other teachers that have entered through the PACE program and such, to say, hey, come work with us, because let me explain to you who I am. I'm a social studies teacher in the 6th grade. But let me tell you what my district does well. I can also tell you what they don't do real well, but I can tell you that they try to do things is great. So I think retention is more of a local level issue. I don't, appropriations and policies, the only thing really at the state level you can do for that. But I do think that we need to focus more on being able to attract top talent to that. And I would like to make sure that our teacher pay is in line with the regional average. Okay. I'm not going to step out there and say I want all teachers to make $200,000 a year, because that'll never work. But I do think that we need to make sure we're as close to the Southeastern average statewide. That's something. So I guess that's pretty much just a few things that stick out on the top of my head, retention and such.
Absolutely. Well, I know SC for ED as a group, as a grassroots group, our movement and our major priority, other than, of course, trying to fund teachers and education as a whole, our main priority is just getting those top-notch teachers into every single classroom and getting them to stay. We want a well-trained, highly qualified teacher in every single classroom, and there are so many over the years that we have lost to other industries for other reasons. Sometimes it's pay, sometimes it's, lack of respect from administration, students, parents, a lot of things. But whatever we could do to just keep those great teachers in the classroom, I think would be great. And sometimes it is monetary, but it's not all monetary.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I think supportive services. So, and of course, again, I don't know that your first year you have to can't call the name of the. You got to go through something at our district. You go. I'm drawing a blank on what it's called. I would imagine, and this is actually something that I challenge my wife to do. When you get a new teacher that comes in the building, the teacher next door needs to do what they can do to make sure that person doesn't drown. Miss Pitts, which is now a retired teacher, she retired my wife's second year. Men actually married when she was in college, so I've seen her from before she was a teacher all the way to her 15th year as a teacher of the year in Spartanburg School District 4, as well as a top 5 teacher right now, awaiting to see if she's going to be the teacher of the year. I'm going to tout her for just a little bit for a minute. But anyway, what the support that Miss Pitts give my wife is the thing that helped her get through that first year and kind of set her on track. So I believe a lot of that has to do with allowing at the local level for them to make sure they have things set in place that wraps around these new teachers, because I can't imagine look, let's face it, you come out of school, you're not prepared to teach. I mean, that's not where you learn to do it, right? So you're going to come out of a extremely controlled environment, college, and go straight into where there's virtually you have no control because you got kids everywhere and such. And I think just taking the pressure off in those first few years and letting them get their legs under them is a great option. And I'm willing to go to the table to fight for whatever might work from the state level to help the people at the local level help those teachers that are new to the profession. And I don't mean just young teachers. I mean PACE program teachers. And I am for other people coming into the teaching profession other than through a traditional right out of college into a 4-year college and such. So I'm all for that. But I think there just needs to be a little bit more of a follow-up process and more intention on helping those teachers. But I also think that's a local level, and I'm not sure how or what I would do, and I'd be more than happy to listen to those ideas. What we could do at the state level that helps make sure that we help those teachers in those crucial first few years that gets their legs under them. So the 70 or 90 or 100 kids they have aren't suffering those first few years. Let's let them focus on teaching, maybe not everything else they got to focus on.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, after this pandemic started and we canceled state testing and other mandated assessments, we were still able to provide education to these students. And I would love to say quality education as well to these students, despite the fact that many teachers did not have some state mandated test held over their head. So what are your opinions on accountability measures today with the fact that we are able to educate children without all of this day in and day out mandated state testing across K-12?
So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner. I'm a salesperson. Okay. So I had a gentleman tell me years ago, he said, if I tell you that you have to attain this, and this right here is the goal, and let's attain this, you're going to do whatever it takes for me to attain, for you, the subordinate, to attain this. Well, if I do my job as the manager and I help you, the salesperson, or i.e. administration helps you, the teacher, not focus so much on a high stake test score and focus more on getting children to the top of their ability, you will be able to raise more children up above that level. Because the issue you have now is when you bring when administration pulls a student in or a teacher in and says, hey, Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, I'm sorry, you're not cutting it here. You've taken your whole focus off of the student and you put your focus on a high stake test. The issue is, and I've not got down to the brass tacks of it yet, but the people that want to make South Carolina look like we're doing terrible in high stakes testing are the same people that sell the test and the same people that sell the information to help get our people up to where they need to be. That's kind of not a legitimate way to be testing a child. That's not what it's about. It's about people making money. That's what it's about. So again, I don't have the answer for how to dissect all that, but I do identify that high stakes testing, I believe, is dangling a carrot in front of somebody's face. They're going to do whatever they got to do to get to that carrot. And that's not teaching a child, because then the next year, what if your testing doesn't line up exactly, and then all of a sudden now teachers got to go back and teach what's really not what they're supposed to be teaching. So it's very convoluted, but I think it has a lot to do with money, and it also has a lot to do with our state and some leaders in the state house wanting public education to look terrible so they can get those tax credits and all, so they can send their children to private school. That's a lot of it as well. So I think money probably has a lot more to do with it than your test scores. They want us to look bad, so then they can say, oh, they're doing terrible. Well, look, on the back of one of my children's, I think it was CJ's pass test, I'm looking at it, and it says he was in the 85th percentile or something. But if he'd have been in Florida, it would have been better than that, because they set their level. It's so like everybody, all 50 states have their own measuring stick, and they can measure however they want. But we're going to make all the kids take all the same test, and then now Florida looks like they're so much smarter than us. Look, numbers never lie. Liars use numbers. Okay, it's the statistical. That's what happens. So anyway, I mean, I could talk about that all day long. Now, I don't have the answer. I'm not saying I have the answer, but I'm saying I identify the issue, and once we peel that onion back, I think we can get away from high stakes testing. But as long as we release the funding and quit tying it to that, I think that's part of the answer.
Absolutely. And I know many teachers aren't against some of the testing, because some testing does have to occur. You do have to measure students at some point. But I know as a high school teacher, one of the things that's so frustrating is our end of course tests, which are a valuable measurement tool. Unlike many other states in the United States, we don't ever get to see the result of our students and where we can improve as educators. They lock that information away from us, and they just say, you as a teacher suck in biology because 50% of your students made below a 60. And it's like, okay, so how can I get better? Do I need to teach photosynthesis? Do I need to teach mitosis better? And they say, well, we can't tell you that. That information is privileged. So we never get to find out as high school teachers where we can grow and improve our students from year to year to year. They lock that information away from us. And so we never, ever get to see that. We're not even allowed to see the questions, which I understand test security. But if you want me to be a better teacher, you need to tell me specifically where my shortcomings are. You can't just say you're a horrible teacher or you're a horrible worker in an industry, and I'm not going to tell you where you need to be and what you need to do to get better. You have to guess.
Yeah. So and again, that makes me believe it's the same smoke and mirrors. Hey, our end of course test in South Carolina's doing terrible. End of course test is in the tank. I think it's just more negative connotation that they can utilize to try to strip away. And the thing that I go back to, one of my main platforms or one of my main positions in my platform is be able to help these children that can't help themselves, the ones that are in foster care and DSS care. If we go to a private option to where you can take public funds away, and then who's going to speak for these kids? Those dear friends of mine that are house parents at the Woodruff or the Church of God Home for Children, they can't take those 8 children that they have that are not theirs and take them out. And so anyway, that kind of all ties in together. What I like to say is I am pro-life, okay? I am pro-life. I'm different than majority of the other people because I believe pro-life means I'm pro-life, not just pro-birth. I'm pro-life that we've got to help people that can't help themselves up to the point that they can get to where then they can be a productive citizen, okay? So that's something I kind of differ on. I'm absolutely pro-life, but I'm pro-life. I just don't see how we can beat our chest. Hey, it's pro-life, and then the child's born, and then look at the parent that didn't want to have them or was trying to have an abortion and say, hey, now you go figure it out. We're done. You just can't abort that child. I just can't see how we can do that. So that's my stance on. I think pro-life goes through, hey, if we wanted to be here, we've got to do what we can do to support them and get them educated and on up through high school. The statistics for DSS children that age out of the system, they're either dead or incarcerated, up to 60% of them. So what are you going to do if now you pull funding away and such from public education? Same thing with them not graduating high school. High school graduates, I mean, the statistics for them being more jail time, more death, they're overall unhealthy, so they're a bigger strain on our hospital systems. It's a conservative approach to get public education, which is educate 90% of our children in the state of South Carolina. It's a conservative approach for us to get this right, because you'll either pay for them now or you'll pay for them later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we've answered all of the questions. Is there anything else you would like to say this evening about education in itself? No, I'm a product of public education, and I did not go the traditional route on to college. So, I think there is a bit of a turn in the education realm that all children don't have to go to college. Okay, especially right out of school. My daughter's 15. She's a rising, or I guess now technically she is a 10th grader or a rising 10th grader. I'm not browbeating her to go directly to college. So I think each child needs to make their own decision, and they don't need to be saddled with a bunch of debt from education, from their college education. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I appreciate it. And we're going to get this out to all of our viewers, especially our Greenville and Spartanburg people. For those of you who are watching, this is Chris Bennett. He's running for District House Seat 35. And will you be on the primary docket? I don't see what you're running as on my spreadsheet.
I will. Yes, ma'am. So I'm running Republican, and so the current candidate is, or the current seating House member is a Republican. So I've got to try to win that in the Republican primary, and so there will be 3 of us. Historically low voter turnout. Everything's pointing to that. So if one thing I can say, I'm absolutely a flag toter for public education, folks. And it is imperative that we get the people that have never really voted in primaries before to the polls, because change happens at the state level in June. It doesn't happen in November, especially in areas like ours that are traditionally Republican, okay? Whoever wins the Republican primary most likely will win the nomination. So, or will win the seat in November. So change happens now. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, as a school board member, that our current person that is representing House District 35 is not on the same side of the road as we're on.
Well, thank you so much. And we will definitely get this information out. And we wish you the best of luck in the primary. And I hope you continue to stay safe. And I hope your family continues to thrive there in Greenville and Spartanburg counties.
That's right. Hey, that sounds great. Hey, visit more BennettForHouse35.com. You can get my cell number there, and you can email me if you want to get involved, make phone calls, or if you want to call me and tell me, hey, you're crazy and we don't want to support you. So,
well, I'm sure you will have a lot of positive feedback from your video today, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate it again.
Thank you. Thank you. Y'all stay safe and have a hold Greenwood down for us.
Will do. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.